moving on now to the second leg of our second big story.
Yeah.
Housing markets in Nigeria are one of the least accessible in the world. Housing experts say this is because most Nigerians do not have the resources to afford them.
Now, but the constant increase in building materials is affecting the average Nigerian that would have loved to invest his saving in building a house.
Finance and housing converge on Abuja for a two-day seminar aimed at tackling the issues of acquiring and accessing affordable houses. Most of the speakers believe that a major challenge facing Africa is its teeming population and finding the right mechanism to drive the housing process.
I think the critical thing facing Africa is the rate at which the population is growing, both in terms of the underlying population growth rate, but also the urbanization rate. And those two things combined are going to present real challenges for Africa over the next 10, 20 years. You're looking at housing needs in excess, already in Nigeria, you're looking at housing needs in excess of 150, 200,000 units per year just to keep up with that demand. The problem is that amount of housing isn't being produced at the moment, both in Nigeria and in other countries.
The housing financing challenge is enormous across Africa because, of course, the house is something that is probably the most expensive investment that any household is going to make. And then, of course, incomes are quite varied across the continent, and we have very many people who have very low incomes. And so it's important that on the financing side, that the financial products that are developed and that are offered match the affordability of the consumers and the nature of their income stream. So mortgage lending is one form of housing finance, and that would provide a long tenor loan.
Others believe the absence of long-term capital that can be used to create mortgages for housing is also a major challenge.
The first of these challenges is the absence of long-term capital. Capital that you can use to create mortgages. You need long-term capital.
Used to create mortgages for housing is also a major challenge.
The first of these challenges is the absence of long-term capital. Capital that you can use to create mortgages. You need long-term capital for that. So that's one of the challenges that we have, absence of long-term capital. The second challenge is the cost of building materials. Typically, houses in Nigeria are not affordable to the average Nigerian, the kind of houses that we have.
But the Nigerian Mortgage Refinance Company says it's ready to raise long-term loans from the capital market to build affordable and accessible houses for Nigerians and Africans.
From an NMRC perspective, our role is to go to the market to raise long-term money from the capital market and to use that long-term money for refinancing mortgages. And in doing so, we're able to provide longer-term mortgages up to 20 years, maybe even beyond, instead of, say, 5 years or even 10 years, that is what is common now. So those are the things that are driving affordability.
This conference is expected to discuss how to put in place strategies that would enable access to affordable housing and, on the long run, put smiles on the faces of Africans.
Right, we're now joined by the President, Nigeria Institute of Building, Tijani Shuaib. It's good to have you join us right now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mike. Good to have you.
Now, let us start this way. Give us a picture of how challenging is it to really build a house for an average Nigerian.
Thank you very much, Mike. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Well, the challenges are many, but to be like you said, to make it short, there are about 3 or 4 challenges. Okay. First, the land acquisition. Then, of course, after land acquisition, then the materials and the cost. That's the financing. So these are challenges to how to get the cost of land, the process of the building plan approval, and the financing. These are the 3 challenges that face any individual or corporate that wants to build a house.
All right, if we have to take the average Nigerian, for instance, you are in the building sector, as the case may be. Is it easy, based on these challenges, is it easy for a Nigerian, an average Nigerian, to build a house of his own?
Well, easy, that also depends. Well, average, yes, depends on the income of that Nigerian. And to build a house, if my memories are right, you know, the government says, when the statistics say that we have about 20 million, 17, 20 million housing deficits. That means there's a lot more is needed. That means a lot of Nigerians are homeless, if I use that word. So it's not easy because the earning, if we base it on the income, the average, the basic salary of an average Nigerian, if being a civil servant, especially not in the private sector, for one to be able to build a house, a three-bedroom house, I wouldn't want to say presently, but at least from the last few years.
Why would you want to say presently?
Yes, well,
because of peculiarities of.
No, let him answer.
I don't know.
We'd like to know
it's
why.
all right.
Well, presently because yes, I know because there are recently for the last few weeks, or not more than 2 months, the building materials prices have gone high.
How high? What ratio would you say compared to what we have, say, a year back, for instance?
I would say it's gone up to 50%, between 40 to 60% of the building materials.
Can you name a figure as to, okay, this costs this and this is? Yeah.
A bag of cement, just not more than 3 months ago, cost 1,600. It now goes between 2,300 to 2,400. Wow. I bought some last week at 2,300 in Abuja.
Wow.
A block of a 9-inch block that used to cost 120 naira per one, a standard block, I mean standard professionally, now costs 160 to 180 of 9-inch block. 6-inch block that used to cost 100 naira is now 160. The same thing goes with reinforcement, which used to cost 120,000 is now 160,000. If you compute it, it's about 40 to 60% increase.
So what do you think is responsible for this hike?
Well, definitely we all know. We are feeling, even if we pretend not to, the country is in recession. Recession means the country is not able to make up with its current and capital expenditure. That means we are illiquid. And illiquidity means there is no purchasing power.
Is it because some of these materials are also imported? So you put the issue of forex, is it also part of it?
Well, thank you very much for that. Well, if you say one I made the 3 or 4 items I just mentioned, but most of them, the 2 or 3 of them are not imported. One is a part the reinforcement, for example. Partially, there are some imported and some locally made. The block making is definitely not imported. The blocks and also the cement. About 90% of the cements in Nigeria are produced in Nigeria. Yeah. But there are other factors that also affect those production due to the recession that I mentioned.
Okay.
All right. Now, we have often heard the slogan, housing for all by the year 2000, housing for all by 2030, housing for all by 2020, and so on. Considering Nigeria, the way we have been the last decade or last 2 decades or last 5 decades until now, is it really achievable to have housing for all in this country?
It's very much achievable. It depends on the will of the government to support it. Support, like I mentioned, 3 or 4 factors that are key to provision of housing: the financing, the land acquisition, and so if the government is willing to, there are many ways we can make housing available and affordable to Nigerians. Depends on the government's implementation and the will to do it.
Okay, if we take those challenges you listed earlier, one after the other, and prefer solutions to them, start with the property, the land. How willing can the government be? What can government do to alleviate that suffering in that area?
For example, if the government can take, if we want to, because for us to provide enough housing, like we said, to make up the deficit of 20 million housing, there has to be mass housing production, if I use that word. And to do that, that means in all the cities in Nigeria, government have to support mass production of housing. And to do that, we need land. So if the land is subsidized, for you to build a house, you must acquire the land. The land acquisition, the cost of land, if it is reduced, because land can be allocated, the government can allocate land for mass housing, depending on. So if you give free land, that will reduce the cost of housing production by more than 30%. Because you don't have to buy, instead of buying the land at 1 million, 2 million, depending on where you are, you now get it free. That reduces your cost. The financing as well. The Federal Mortgage Bank, for example, there are other financing issues, financing ways of financing and supporting. and making the housing very cheap, affordable. So the average Nigerian can now go into buying it and paying it instrumentally, even based on his salary. That makes it affordable.
All right. Now, we know that there are different stages when you're building a house to get approvals for this, to get certification for that, and all of that. Can you take us through the process, average overview process of how to really build a house? What are the processes in building the house? At what point do you get government certification or any kind of accreditation or approval? Can you take us through that process from the scratch?
Well, that's the general process, because it varies between state to state, city to city, depending on where and the regulations.
All right.
But definitely there has to be the land acquisition. To get a land, it has to be, and when we talk of land, that means a standard approved land that we CFO. If it doesn't have a certificate of occupancy, you need to go into the process of getting the certificate. With the certificate of occupancy, you now have to involve the services of professionals, like our professional body, like the architects, the town planners, the engineers, to design. And when it is designed, it is now sent into the authorities for approval. And there are a lot of things, the fees to pay and so on and so forth to get it approved. When you get it approved, you now involve the professionals again. The architect who design it, the structural engineer who has put all the structures, and our professional body. We are the production managers, the process of producing that house at the best cost and the best quality possible.
Okay. All right. So apart from the government being a sole provider of these mass houses, is there need for the private sector to come in? And if they come in, how viable is the sector for this particular area for the private sector? Because if you look at the GDP contribution of the sector itself, it's barely 0.5%. Where that's what we have in Nigeria, whereas in Ghana you have about 2%. In Ghana, in Botswana, 2%. Botswana and Ghana in population, why is that? Again,
yes, the private sector can be a lot. It can do a lot to support the production, and that again comes back to the government, because if the private sector wants to produce the houses for sale, have to make a profit out of it, and to do that, if the government subsidizes the land and the process of the approvals, which has some cost implications, thereby the private sector also gets it at a cheaper rate, and we sell at a cheaper rate.
Okay, but the macroeconomic policy, is it helpful right now? What we have, the borrowing level and the rate, is it helpful right now?
Well, I wouldn't say
if you don't want to go to the mortgage bank, you perhaps want to use the major commercial banks.
Well, the commercial banks, I don't think at the moment is really possible, because the interest rates are high. And before you get the loan, and before you even finish the house, the interest will start accumulate, and definitely it is not the best for average Nigeria. But for the mortgage bank, yes, the interest rates are a single digit interest rate, and for payable over a number of years, which the private banks, for example, will not accept. In that case, it is easier to go there. And even the private sector, like I said, the private sector can give you a payment period of up to 10 years. And if they get it cheaper and give it that, you will occupy the property without even finish paying. So that makes it easier and cheaper for now.
All right.
All right. Well, let's go into the issue of a housing policy. Governments, after governments have come up with different housing policies in Nigeria, sometimes there are numbers of houses they want to build per month or per quarter or per year, if you want to divide it by whatever the case may be. But all of these we have not really seen. What do you think is the obstacle or the challenge in Nigerians feeling the impact of some of these policies?
Well, I think all this is come to do with the implementation.
All right.
The government has the policy once, but the process of implementation, there are a lot of bottlenecks. And I think here I want to mention mostly the professionals in the built environment are not involved.
In the formulation of the policies?
The policy or the execution. The policy is the implementation, I mentioned.
Okay.
So is the process of implementation. If the professionals in the built environment are fully engaged, the quality will be maintained, and the process will be faster, and it will be a lot cheaper. But if the implementation has bottlenecks, at the government hierarchies. That's what causes, what slows down. And after a year, 2, 3, because we have after 4 years, the election is conducted, and before you know it, that policy is now stepped down.
So if it becomes codified, if the policy becomes codified, it becomes a law, then whoever comes must follow suit.
Absolutely.
You don't
That's
agree?
Continuity. I agree with you.
All right, let's look at alternatives to the cement and the block. The price you rightly mentioned has gone up. What other alternatives can one look at instead of using the, some people have said the interlocking, the bond bricks and things like that? Would that work?
Yes, but it comes back to the same thing. If I say the concrete blocks or the concrete blocks cost 40, 50%, 60% increase, when you go into the internet, the same thing. The question we ask is, why is that increase? And like I mentioned, it's because of the recession, because there are machines used to, and the materials used to produce those materials.
What about husk? Like some people have said, rice, a husk of corn, for instance, or coconut husk, that those things can be put together to build houses. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I'm coming to that. I said that you mentioned interlocks and the rice husk. It can be done to be used, but it's only on the production. That's the raw material, and the production process costs more. And like I said, because of the depression, the machines, all the materials used for the production of that building material goes higher. So there will be subsequent increase on that item as well. It's an alternative that may be cheaper, but at the same time, at the present...
do we even have the machine to process those materials?
Yes.
Here,
yes,
we do, okay.
We do.
All right.
We do.
All right, give us an idea, because when we hear of the Nigerian Institute of Building, not so many Nigerians understand where they come in the building process, as the case may be. Can you give us a picture of what role, if it's a regulatory role, or if it's an advisory role, or a consultancy role, as the case may be, can Nigerians know more about this?
Yes, the Nigerian Institute of Building is a professional non-profit organization, a professional body with over 10,000 members across the country. We are having that means at every level, be it the training of artisans and craftsmen, the supervision, the management of the production process of any building, be it commercial, residential, or whatever. We are supposed to be charged in delivering that process and guaranteeing the quality and standard.
Quite a lot of issues that we'll take a look at when we come back from this break.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and we at this time are looking at the housing deficit and the master plan, as well as the projection for housing in Nigeria. And we have been discussing with the president of the Nigeria Institute of Building, Tijani Shuaib, and we've been looking at this. Now, let's look at a typical Lagos, for instance, in places where people want to build houses and then youths come around. The one they call Omonile, they have different names anyway. Okay. But they come and then you have to pay them something for whatever stage you get to in the building, you have to pay. Now, how does that impact the challenge in building of houses, and what is the role of your institute in trying to help or assist anyone who is building a house in that regard?
Well, I don't know the way they come. Are they official? They come to us for certain fees, or how they just come?
When you're building a house, is there supposed to be youth? Are they supposed to be youths who are official, who come around to say you need to pay us this?
Those they call land grabbers, but I think the government has done something about them right now.
I don't think I don't think they have the government backing to do that.
They don't have government backing, but the government has sanctioned them from what we hear now. But
there's a law against that now, we know.
Okay.
But in practical terms, they're still operating.
Well, that's where the production manager of that building comes as our professional body. We are the supervisor of the production manager. You know, of course, once you are erecting a building or any structure, there are bound to be certain in that Nigerian factor, if I may use that word. It's up to him to know how to deal with them, how to handle them in a diplomatic and peaceful manner. Of course, it means it doesn't add much cost, I believe. Some maybe they're just looking for a way of finding something without having to take the authority, the law into the hand. If they go more, if they ask for more, yes, you have the power to involve the government to get the law enforcement agencies and stop that.
Okay, let's talk about building collapse and insurance. According to NICOM, you must insure any building. Once you start construction, it's expected that that building is insured. But we don't get to see that much in this Nigeria of today, whereas even where you have a building collapse, the victims of such building collapse, even dead or alive, are not compensated because the buildings are not insured the way they should. What is your institute doing about that?
Thank you very much. Yes, NICOM by the present law provides that every building must be insured, and but to do that, before they can insure anybody, any developer, potential developer to get insured, there are steps, there are provisions, and part of it, he must involve the services of the professional bodies. That's where we come in. So the design at the design level, the architects are there. At the structural level, the engineers are there, and at the delivery of that, the builders are there. We have been invited several times to come in as NICOM wants to insure properties. They will have to give the guarantee, and that means it must be guaranteed that a builder, a professional builder, must be involved in the production, in the management of the production process. And with that, you will definitely be guaranteed, and in case of any eventual collapse, that the owner must be compensated.
Do you tell the artisan that it is part of they should ask? For instance, if you ask me to work in a building, is it my right to know if this building is collapsed before I take the job?
The artisans?
Should they be? Yeah, the artisans who are employed to work to construct this building. If you say you want me to do this, I need to know, is this building collapsed? Is it insured?
Well, the artisans is only going. First of all, we are also responsible for training and retraining of the craftsmen artisans of the building sector. We are responsible for that. And we guarantee we have the certification by the National Board for Technical Education.
Are they also trained to ask and demand that this building is insured before I start work? If anything happens to me, will my life or my family be catered for? Shouldn't be part of your responsibility to the artisans.
It is, but that is if the artisans are registered with us. We have a platform, we have a database for training and retraining and guaranteeing the quality of the artisans. So with that, if that artisan is under our database, he has the right, and if anything happens, then we will have to intervene because we guarantee his safety and we assure the quality delivery.
But shouldn't it be a very tight and organized profession where it becomes a criteria? Because we know that if you are going to be a lawyer, there is no way you're going to practice anywhere if you're not certified. If you're going to be a medical doctor, there is no way you're going to practice anywhere if you're not certified. Shouldn't that be a criteria so that it brings some kind of uniformity, it brings some sanity into the system, and it brings some kind of assurance?
And yes, I think that's the roadmap that the former government had started about 4 years ago. The roadmap to that, we are coming to that, the National Vocational Qualification Framework. In that case, that's where we are giving the body, where the approval body, where we endorse and train them. So we have the program. If we have a lot of them, all of them trained across the country, the government is planning to come up with a policy whereby one, or be at the private sector or the government level, for any construction to take place, you must employ the services of those people. So if that policy is there, that's when the more you have available, the quality is assured, and that means in that case they have also the wealth creation, and by that we are sure of any eventual accident that they will be compensated.
All right, we'll come back to this, Tijani. Now, one of the basic needs of man is shelter, and in Nigeria, to feel comfortable and respectable, you may need to buy or build a house to call your own. It has become increasingly difficult for an average income earning Nigerian to become a house owner as the cost of building material keeps skyrocketing. Some
components of building a structure in Nigeria include cost of land, survey, approved building plan, certificate of occupancy, that's your C of O, building materials, among others. The rapid population increase and rural to urban migration have contributed to the shortfall of housing in Nigeria.
Now, the cost of building materials, access to infrastructure, stringent loan conditions from mortgage banks, time to process legal documents, and inadequate government housing policies are also major issues affecting housing delivery. Now, in 2015, the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria said more than 68 million Nigerians are either homeless or improperly housed.
There is no exact figure regarding housing deficit in Nigeria, but the World Bank World Habitat Report of 2007 puts the figure between 17 to 20 million. The World Bank says about 59.5 trillion naira is needed to bridge the housing deficit through affordable housing. The housing and construction sector accounts for only 3.1% of Nigeria's rebased GDP. What I read out earlier was before the GDP. So housing production is 100,000 units per year, while 800,000 units are needed yearly to reduce the over 17 million housing deficit in the country to avert a housing crisis by the year 2020.
Now, it is estimated that at least 700,000 units each year may help in bridging the gap. Now, the lack of robust mortgage financing system in Nigeria has made the home ownership rate one of the lowest in Africa at 25%. Statistics show that countries such as Singapore is 90%, Indonesia is 84%, Kenya is 73%, USA is 70%, Benin Republic here, just our neighbors here, is 63%, and South Africa is 56%. All have higher home ownership rates.
All right, so
let's come back to Tijani in the studio. At least you've seen some of these countries, the percentage of ability to own a house and all of that. But what are they doing differently that we are not doing? When we say we are the giant of Africa, we are this, we're that, and we're supposed to be leaders in every aspect.
And even the rebasing, some people have contested it right now, so we may have to revert back to the old figure of 0.5% of the GDP if the rebasing is in contention right now.
Yes, I agree with you. Many of those countries, I've been to Brazil, I've been to Malaysia, I've been to Singapore, I've been to Turkey, I've seen it all. And they have many, there are a lot of systems they put in place. Among is what we said, like the mass house, provide the housing at a cheaper rate by giving land free, for example. That's what they call the social housing. Or there are many methods which they use, and if the government, and again I say, is the will to implement. We also have them, we have the proposal, the professional bodies have the ways to deliver the housing at affordable rate. Again, we say because a housing now, for example, a 2-bedroom house in an average city in Nigeria, if it can cost less than 1 million naira, 1.5 million, I'm sure a lot of people can go into mortgage system and acquire it. But when a 2-bedroom house goes as far as 5 to 7 million, not talk of Abuja, which is 20 million.
All right.
How is it possible?
Okay, talk about the budget for 2016. I think it's about 40 billion, right? That was earmarked for building in Nigeria. Is that enough?
Well, it's not enough, but it's, at least if that can be provided for, is the beginning. Okay. It's not enough, but at least it's somewhere. If we can start and make it available and implement it properly, at least there is a start. A starting point is always good. We can increase it by next. It's not enough, but it's, at least if that can be provided for, is the beginning. Okay. It's not enough, but at least it's somewhere. If we can start and make it available and implement it properly, at least there is a start. A starting point is always good. We can increase it by next year, and gradually we can be achieved there. But like you rightly said, well, we need more than 800,000 housing per annum, and we are producing less than 100,000. If this fund is not available, if the system is not changed, if the will to implement is not made, how do we achieve that? So let's say if we have that amount, we start, it's a starting point. Okay. We will reject it, but let it be provided for, and let it be properly implemented and guided by the professionals.
All right, Tijani Shuaib, President, Nigeria Institute of Building, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
All right.